do it for 7 years. And then he's looking at a quarter-cent sales tax increase for 4 years. And that's going to generate about $6 billion. And he's hoping that that will at least begin the process of stopping the bleeding. Because if you don't stop the bleeding, you're going to still have to then deal with the structural problems that we have within public education or within the budget for public education. Absent this particular measure, Prop 30 for the government, we still have $6 billion of trigger cuts that we have to make. And the reason why we had to establish the trigger cuts was that was the only way we could balance the budget, because we don't have any revenue anymore. Prop 30 will provide the revenue to stave off that particular bleeding. Now, I know that there is a competing measure. Let me say a little bit about that, and not too much, because I think that individuals can differ, and we ought to work together and try to be as helpful as we can to public education. The other measure is the Molly Munger measure. That measure raises a little bit less in the first year, but in the succeeding years, about $10 billion. So it's a little bit more money. One of the other realities of the Molly Munger measure is that it does in fact broaden the base. It looks at individuals even about 50,000 to raise their income tax liability. But the major difference between the Molly Munger and the governor's proposal is that the money from the governor's measure goes in fact to Sacramento, and it then is allocated based on the formula that you vote for by us in the legislature, signed by the governor. Now, the negativity on that is that, what can you trust politicians? Well, you know, I think we're all Democrats here, and you elect us, and hopefully there's some relationship. But nevertheless, you know, we have done things that may not engender a lot of trust with the general public. And so what the Molly Munger ballot measure does is that it does not, in fact, allow us to touch the money. In fact, it is sent directly to the schools. The problem with that is that, for those of you who know school financing is extremely complex, is that there are dollars that we need to allocate to the schools, because it was, in fact, based on Prop 98, dollars that were, in fact, destined for our schools. And that's an obligation that the state of California still owes to the schools. When you have the Molly Munger measure, that obligation is not addressed. Whereas the governor's Prop 30, that obligation is addressed. And so